We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land. But we all must lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, your neighbor over there, a bit bewildered, but he cares.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Grover, and we are here this afternoon with Dr. Robert E. McNulty, who is the Director of Programs at the Center of Business Ethics at Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. He is also the founder and executive director of a 501c3 nonprofit organization called Applied Ethics, Inc., the main project for which is the people-to-people peacemaking program called Pax Populi. Welcome, Bob.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
You are the founder of Pax Populi. What exactly does that mean, and what was your purpose for forming this organization?
Pax Populi is actually a Latin term. It means the peace of the people, people-to-people peacemaking program. I came up with the idea for Pax Populi in 2006, just after I finished my PhD, and the focus of my doctoral studies was ethics. And it struck me that the most fundamental and crucial ethical principle is just to have a peaceful society, to find ways to resolve conflicts without killing people or resorting to violence. And at the time, we had been engaged in the war in Afghanistan for 5 years, which seemed extremely long to me. And it was at a time in history where the internet was now a reality. There wasn't even the term social media at the time, but I had a kind of a thought that really was similar in a way to Facebook or the whole idea of social media, which is to draw on the internet to a large extent to bring together people from all around the world and to focus their efforts in very constructive ways to advance peace. The mission for Pax Populi is to put the tools of peacemaking into the hands of ordinary people through initiatives that advance education and economic development within a framework of human rights. So education, economic development, and human rights are the three pillars of Pax Populi.
2006, certainly the internet wasn't as strong as it is right now.
Right.
And right now, you are focusing on what effort in terms of that internet connection?
We are a small organization. That is sort of a frustrating thing because if it were a larger organization, we might be able to focus on various conflicts around the world. And obviously, Syria is an example. The concerns between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But we have decided to limit ourselves to the conflict in Afghanistan. And there, we've done a number of projects with Afghanistan, but the one that has pretty much risen to the top and is now occupying the vast majority of my efforts and the efforts of our organization is called the Pax Populi Tutoring Program. And it's a program that draws on the internet as a way of bringing services to Afghanistan. It uses Skype, and we bring in tutors from various places in the United States and from around the world, and we're operating in about half a dozen countries around the world, to work with kids in Afghanistan, typically from grammar school through people that have graduated from university. They work with our tutors to help them improve their English. That's been the main focus of our work.
So the tutors are not only from the United States, but they're from all over the world.
Quite a number from South Korea, because it's a very big English as a second language community, ESL community. We've had them in Australia. We have had one in Saudi Arabia, a very excellent teacher in Greece. We've had them in France, in England, quite a number in the United States. Our main institutional partner is Bentley University, where I work, but we have had from other places in the United States.
Maybe you can explain a little bit how it got started in Afghanistan.
I've been to Afghanistan twice for this work. The first time I went to Afghanistan, I was visiting a school outside of Kabul, and I was talking to a couple of people. And what I learned was that if you could speak English well, that it opened up all sorts of economic opportunities for an Afghan. And the impact on their income was dramatic. It also occurred to me that when you learn English, it is the closest thing to a universal language that we have. An Afghan that can learn and speak in English has all sorts of economic and cultural doors that are open for him or her. The other thing is that the way our program works is that we arrange for one-to-one Skype sessions between the tutors and the tutees, and we provide them with educational materials to help guide their lessons. One of the things that happens is that the students in Afghanistan may not have had any kind of interactions with Westerners prior to that, and they may have heard all sorts of stories about what Westerners are like. And this gives them a personal experience that is, overwhelmingly very positive, caring, concerned. We do have an academic objective, which is to help them in learning English, but the personal connection is every bit as important as the academic one. We find that, for example, especially in Afghanistan where women's rights are very restricted, for the students to be working with one of our female tutors, and the large percentage, probably 70% or so of our tutors are women. That's a very amazing, interesting and important experience for them. We don't need to say anything about women's rights. Just the fact that they see a young woman who's college educated and articulate and professional can be a very, I think, inspiring and valuable experience for the tutors, and both male and female.
Right, and the tutors then can demonstrate the self-esteem that is so needed in a repressed, male-dominated society, it seems to me, so that serves that purpose, I would think.
It does, and we have quite consciously kept the doors open in our program to both men and women. And the reason for that is that even though we very much want to support female education in Afghanistan, we want the guys on board too. So, for example, one of the other things that we do, we have a website and a Facebook page, and periodically we have special programs on that. And on Women's Day, International Women's Day, we had a program which was honoring the women of Afghanistan. And we had about 40 contributions from around Afghanistan, and they were mostly from women, but probably about 40% from the men. And I actually was very much advocating that we want to hear the men's voice in favor of honoring the women of Afghanistan, because they do, and especially the younger generation. But because we need them, we need both sides of the equation to make this thing work.
And Afghanistan, I've always heard, is a very poor country. So how do the students get access to the internet and hardware that they can use? We
almost exclusively work with partners. The partners provide the internet access. They provide the Skype-enabled computers. We worked with several partners in the city of Kabul. In my second trip to Afghanistan, I spent most of that time in the province of Bamiyan, and we then extended the program to Bamiyan. We recently started working with a partner in Jalalabad that's just getting going. And then we have a new partner that I'm very excited about in the city of Kandahar, which is in the south, and which, if you hear anything about it, it's usually about insurgency activities. But this school is a remarkable school. They told me recently that if I had the tutors for them, they could handle it. I can't remember, they said 30 or 50 more tutors.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It really is,
fantastic.
yeah.
Can you define a partner?
The first partner we had was an organization that I just think the world of. It's called the School of Leadership Afghanistan. And that was founded by a man named Ted Achilles. It's based in Kabul. And I learned about SOLA the day before I was leaving Afghanistan on my first trip. But so I got back to the United States, and first thing I did is I tracked down Ted, and we had a face-to-face meeting. He came soon thereafter to the U.S. They were sort of the first institution that we set up this program with, and from there we've worked with a couple of schools. We've worked with two NGOs. One is called Afghans for Progressive Thinking. These are usually college graduates, and they're college graduates that are interested in engaging with the West. We work with another NGO, and then we've also worked with two or three They're called Lincoln Learning Centers, and these are centers that are funded by the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, and they're located usually on or near university campuses. And they're places where an Afghan can go and find literature on the United States, or they basically have a library, but they also have the Skype-enabled computers, and they've agreed to let us work there. And the most recent significant partner is this school in Kandahar. It's called the Kandahar Institute for Modern Studies. It has been funded primarily through the Canadian International Development Association. But they have 700 students, and they'd very much like to have their students become more proficient in English. And so this is a relatively new partnership for us, but so far it's been a very, very fruitful, great one.
So it sounds like in Afghanistan, the opportunities for students are rich. And that your program in providing mentors that are from other parts of the world is now a huge opportunity for the Afghan student or young person to connect and start to learn. I guess English is your focus right now.
Yeah, by learning English, they not only can connect with people that are from the United States or England, but it really is the language that people use across cultures. I've worked a lot in international business prior to going into academia, but I worked, for example, as a consultant with the government of Indonesia for a while, and our clients would always speak with business people around the world, and what did they speak in but in English. So this opens up all sorts of opportunities for them. I think it's also important to also note, though, that it's not only a rich experience for the Afghans, but it's a very rich experience for the tutors. You know, if you ask most people what is their impression of Afghanistan, they'll tend to think that it's just a horrible place, and they have very negative opinions and views on Afghanistan. And I don't share that view at all. What I can say, though, is that our tutors will see that the Afghans that they're working with have had all sorts of experiences that you would never want anybody to have. They've seen war up close, and it's a very traumatic and distressing thing. And yet the reason why our tutors enjoy and are supportive of the program is because they're frequently, if not generally, touched and moved by the earnestness of the students. Their dedication to learning, their hopefulness that somehow they're going to be able to create a country that will eventually stabilize and be successful. It's those students that are my inspiration. I am committed to this program. I know that there's a very strong pressure to wind down international activities by the United States and our allies in Afghanistan, but I'm quite dedicated to keeping this going because really the commitment I feel because of the young people that I've encountered through the years working in this program.
I've had some experiences teaching, and I find that the student-teaching relationship that isn't a one-way street. It goes both ways. So I find it exciting that people all over the world are getting to know about what's going on in Afghanistan, and able to learn about at a personal level. So your mentors are connecting with people, and your Pax Populi sort of mission is being fulfilled by these people, it sounds like. I mean,
it is. I don't want to overstate what we're doing. We're a small organization. We have 0 paid employees, and our budget's not much bigger than that. But despite the limitations, we've been at this actively. Really, we first started working in 2008 with an initiative at Bentley University called Food for Peace in Afghanistan, and then in 2009 was when the organization got tax-exempt status. And that's when we really were able to start cranking up the effort. And that's when I made my first trip to Afghanistan. And it's through the power of the internet and social media that people pop up from around the world and somehow hear about us, and then we have a kind of an interview process, and if they seem like they have the qualifications, then we say, well, you've got what it takes, and if you can spare your time and your talents, and we welcome you. And so far, it's been very successful.
You talked about your efforts and the perception that Afghanistan is a lost cause, especially in this country. And I know that it's a perception with NATO and all the NATO efforts that have gone into it. And also, when I reflect back on when the Russians were thrown out of Afghanistan, we turned our backs on Afghanistan because we didn't see any opportunities there, I guess, or we missed the boat somehow. And now we're about to wind down this military effort in Afghanistan, and we shouldn't be making the same mistake. It seems like your work is in offsetting that mistake that we made when the Russians left.
What happened was the U.S. contributed covertly enormous amounts of armaments to support the Mujahideen who were fighting the Soviet Union. And finally, after 10 years fighting in Afghanistan, the Soviets gave up. And so the U.S. essentially thought that they had done what they needed to do, and we turned off the funding and walked away. Well, we succeeded in helping the Afghans to eject the Soviets, but what happened was we then washed our hands of Afghanistan and let the chips fall where they may. And the outcome was disastrous. Afghanistan was really decimated under the civil war that ensued. The Taliban eventually came out on top. They shut down female education altogether, and rather than any kind of economic progress, the country just fell into an economic black hole and a safe haven for terrorists, and that was what permitted the 9/11 tragedy to take place. I think that it would be a disastrous mistake if the United States and its allies decided that we've really done all we need to do and we should just close up shop and leave Afghanistan. I'm not saying by any means that we should try to maintain the same kind of level of military operations, but from the very beginning, I've always felt that really. I'm not trying to be critical of the United States. I think that we've done a lot of good in Afghanistan. But I would have recommended that we put far more effort on education and infrastructure development rather than on military activity. I would say rather than being in hot pursuit of the Taliban and their fellow travelers, that if we limited the military side to much more defensive activities, but focused on the development of infrastructure and education, we would have gone much farther. So the philosophy and strategy that we have for our little organization, and I don't want to pretend that we're bigger than we are, but to distinguish what I would call a war strategy from a peace strategy. And I think that a war strategy is one in which you try to defeat your enemy. You say, they're the bad guys, and we're going to kill you, or we're going to disarm you, we're going to basically incapacitate you. And when we do that, then we'll worry about how do we get things back on track. A peace strategy that has guided my work is to do just the opposite, which is to say we're going to do all we can to help the good guys to build up their country. And it's going to be their job to figure out how are they going to make it work. But give them the tools so that they can succeed. And I think that they will succeed. Actually, there's been an awful lot of contribution that the West has made to help Afghanistan's economic development, but the economic development in Afghanistan over the last 10 years has been amazing. And it's occurred under very, very difficult circumstances. But despite that, they know what's in their best interest. And the Afghans overwhelmingly do not want anything to do with this war. But I think that the best defense against this kind of insurgency is to get people jobs and get them well educated and let them use their own self-interest and the goodwill that they end up having by positive relations with the outside world and put that to work to create a growing, thriving society.
Yeah. It's not just the education, though, it seems like to me. It's about building self-esteem and people knowing that they're not alone. And I think your mentor program sounds like this exciting opportunity for Afghan people and also people from other parts of the world to get to know each other, and that piece of it, I think, is really extraordinary, very unusual with your program. So I'm really excited about what you're doing. I think it appears to be the right focus for bringing peace to a war-torn country, and also bringing that level of self-esteem that creates the economic opportunity.
When a country's been beaten up as many times as Afghanistan has, because it's been invaded so many times. And so it's not surprising that they're very tough and also very wary of outside intervention. And so the sort of the narrative, the story that is being used to sort of create propaganda for the insurgents is, we're being invaded again. We just need to let the Afghans do their own work themselves and support them. And the falsity of that narrative will collapse under its own weight. I think that it's also really important, though, to think about this from the perspective of the United States. If we look at our history, we've done some really great things in terms of our international engagements, and we've done a lot of really lousy things, no question. But I think it's really worth noting Korea, for example, as an example. My wife is from South Korea, and I travel to Korea about every 2 years. It's an amazing country. Well, that's the South. Now, draw a line. I think it's a 48th parallel, whatever it is.
Right.
And you have North Korea up there. And it's probably the worst country to live in on the planet. It shows what economic development and democracy can do. And the United States did a really wonderful thing by encouraging and helping the Koreans to develop their society in a way that is really something we can all be proud of. And I think that Germany is another example. I've actually been to West Berlin and East Berlin. I was there before the Berlin Wall fell, and I crossed through Checkpoint Charlie. It was one of the passageways where you could go from West Berlin into East Berlin. It was like going into a different world. The United States had a really constructive role there in helping West Germany flourish, and that led to the peaceful reunification, and I hope the same thing will happen with North and South Korea. Well, with Afghanistan, I think that there's still a very, very, very valuable role that we can have there, and I do not want to see us just sort of like wash our hands and say, you know what, adios, sayonara, we've done enough here, sick of the place, bye-bye.
Right. How is it that you're able to do this? Where do you get your funds from, and how, what is the focus of, let's say, your fundraising effort, and how can we help you?
I'm very proud to say that we helped one a remarkable Afghan woman come here to the United States, and she was studying at Salem State University, and it was taxing for me because I wasn't very good at fundraising, but she has done remarkable. Her name is Shugufa Amini, and thanks really through the amazing compassion and help of just a guardian angel named Beth Grader. Beth really took Shugufa under her wing and really helped her a lot, and then got some of her other friends. And Shugufa is now going to Regis College, and I'm proud to say that she got a 3.4 average last semester. Now, that was with the amazing help of Beth and some of her friends. In terms of what I'm doing that remains, I'm trying to build up the tutoring program is really the centerpiece of our work. And What I would like to see is this to develop into a much more robust school system, a schooling educational program that goes beyond English, includes English, but it does it in a much better way, a much more systematic and pedagogically sophisticated way. And I'd also like to add business education to that down the road. And there's a lot of opportunities with what they call MOOCs, the massive online open courses. And so I'd like to kind of go in that direction. But unfortunately, because I really have not been able to do that well in terms of fundraising, we are now still entirely 100% volunteer organization. We have no paid employees. And we use primarily free online tools such as Skype and Google Apps. They give a free tools to nonprofits. But to develop our program, we need to actually invest in technology, better software, databases, and we do need to hire people. I'm hopeful. We've made various grant applications, but so far we haven't succeeded in getting those. But one of these days, I think our track record is quite good, and somebody's going to look at this and say, oh, they deserve some help. So we keep at it. It's amazing what you can do. They say necessity is the mother of invention. I could personally get discouraged, but it's when you get a new school in Kandahar, and there's new kids that are coming in Kabul, and every year, new tutors that do this and say, wow. Then I say, you know what, we're not going anywhere, we're going to stay here. My determination is, in as much as I can do it, is to see us stay at it till Afghanistan stabilizes, and it will become a thriving nation, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's important that Afghan youth have choices. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For coming, Bob. Really
you.
appreciate it.
All the problems can all be solved with dedication and a little resolve. Obstacles slowly dissolve when we all just get involved. We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land.